The sky turned angry that night. Had seen many storms on this distant planet, but nothing like this one. The clouds twisted and rolled like living things. Purple lightning cracked across the darkness every few seconds. The wind screamed so loud that he could not hear his own thoughts. Stood at his small window and watched the chaos outside. He was 32 years old, with tired eyes and rough hands from years of hard work. Once, he had been a military medic, saving lives on battlefields during the colony wars. Now he was just a farmer on Seven, a small planet at the edge of human space. He had come here to find peace. He had come here to forget. His home was simple: 4 metal walls, a roof that sometimes leaked, and enough equipment to keep him alive. The nearest neighbor lived 3 hours away by ground vehicle. The nearest town was 2 days of travel. Liked it this way. He did not want company. He did not want to remember the friends he had lost in the war. The storm grew worse. The electromagnetic energy in the air made his equipment spark and flicker. His lights went out, then came back on, then went out again. Lit a small emergency lamp and sat down to wait. These storms could last for days. All he could do was stay inside and hope his shelter would hold. Then he saw something that made his heart stop. Through the swirling dust and rain, a figure was moving. Someone was out there in the storm. Pressed his face against the window, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him. No one could survive out there. The air itself was toxic during these storms. The dust carried chemicals that would burn human lungs in minutes. But the figure kept moving. It was crawling now, struggling against the wind. It fell down, got up, fell down again. Did not think. He grabbed his emergency suit and pulled it on as fast as he could. His hands were shaking. The suit was old and patched in many places, but it would protect him for a few minutes. Maybe enough time, maybe not. He opened his door and the storm hit him like a wall. The wind nearly knocked him off his feet. He could barely see anything through the dust clouds, but he pushed forward, 1 step at a time, following where he had seen the figure. The toxic dust burned even through his suit. He could feel the heat on his skin. His breathing mask filtered most of the poison, but his eyes watered and stung. Every second out here was dangerous. Every second could be his last. He found her lying face down in the dirt, not moving. Grabbed her and pulled her over his shoulder. She was lighter than he expected. He turned back toward his home, but the dust was so thick he could not see it anymore. For a terrible moment, he thought he was lost. Then lightning flashed, and he saw the outline of his shelter. He ran, his legs burned. His lungs screamed for air. The stranger on his shoulder did not move at all. He crashed through his door and slammed it shut behind him. The sudden silence after the storm's noise was shocking. Laid the stranger on his bed, and finally looked at her clearly. She was not human. Her skin was silver blue, smooth and soft like flower petals. Along her temples and down her neck, delicate patterns glowed faintly like tiny lights under her skin. Her face was beautiful in a way that seemed impossible. High cheekbones, a small nose, lips that curved gently. Her eyes were closed, but her chest rose and fell slowly. She was alive. Her clothes were torn and dirty, but even damaged, they looked expensive. The fabric seemed to move slightly on its own, slowly repairing itself. Had never seen anything like it. He checked her pulse and found something strange. She had 3 heartbeats instead of 1. His medical training kicked in automatically. He ran to get his equipment, his mind racing with questions but his hands steady and sure. Her blood was copper green when he took a sample. Her body temperature was much lower than a human's. Many of his standard medicines would probably kill her rather than help her. Worked through the night, testing, adjusting, improvising. He found wounds on her body. Burns, cuts, bruises. Some looked like they came from the storm. Others looked older, like she had been in a fight or an accident. He treated each one carefully, watching her vital signs on his old medical scanner. Several times during the night, she stopped breathing. Each time brought her back. He talked to her even though she could not hear him, old habit from his medic days. Wounded soldiers often said they remembered voices even when they were unconscious. "Stay with me," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "You did not crawl through that storm just to die in my house. Stay with me." He gave her fluids through a tube, mixing compounds that he hoped would help rather than hurt. He wrapped her wounds with clean bandages. He adjusted her body temperature with heating pads, guessing at what temperature she needed. By morning, the storm had calmed a little. Sat beside the bed, too tired to move. He had not slept at all. His eyes burned and his body ached, but he watched the stranger's face, waiting for any sign of change. She had almost died 5 times during the night. 5 times he had pulled her back from the edge. He did not know why he was trying so hard. He did not know this woman. He did not even know what species she was. But something inside him refused to let her go. Maybe it was his training. Maybe it was the memory of all the soldiers he could not save. Maybe it was simply because she was a living being who needed help. The light through his window grew brighter. The twin moons of 7 faded as the sun rose. Eyes grew heavy. He blinked, fighting to stay awake. Then she opened her eyes. They were like nothing he had ever seen. Silver and gold swirling together like stars being born in deep space. For a long moment she just stared at him. Her face showed no fear, only confusion and wonder. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice was soft and musical, with an accent he could not place. "You are safe," said. "You are in my home. I found you in the storm." She looked around the small room, taking in the simple furniture, the medical equipment, the worn walls. Then she looked back at him. "You saved me," she said. "It was not a question." Nodded. "You almost died, many times." Something changed in her eyes. Something deep and ancient moved behind that silver-gold gaze. She reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth. "Thank you," she whispered. "I owe you my life." Felt uncomfortable with such heavy words. He pulled his hand back gently and stood up. "You need rest. I will make some food. We can talk later." He walked to his small kitchen area, his heart beating strangely fast. Behind him, the stranger watched him go. Her eyes followed his every movement with an intensity he did not notice. She had been ready to die in that storm. She had accepted her fate when her ship crashed and her guards were killed. She had dragged herself across the toxic ground with no hope of survival. And then a human had run into the storm to save her. A species her people considered primitive and dangerous. A species many in her empire wanted to conquer or destroy. She looked at his humble home, at his worn clothes, at his tired face as he prepared simple food for them both. Perhaps, she thought, her people had been wrong about humans. Perhaps this was the answer she had been searching for. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the small shelter, something new and unexpected had begun. 3 days passed before she was strong enough to sit up by herself. During those days, took care of her like she was his own family. He changed her bandages twice a day. He fed her soup that he made from his stored vegetables. He checked her 3 heartbeats every few hours to make sure they were getting stronger. She told him her name on the 2nd day. "You may call me," she said. "My true name has sounds that human voices cannot make, but is close enough." Repeated, testing the word. "That is a good name. It sounds Korean." "Korean?" she asked. "My people," he explained. "From a country on Earth called Korea. My ancestors lived there for thousands of years before humans went to the stars." Found this fascinating. She asked many questions about Korea, about Earth, about human history. Answered as best as he could, surprised by how much he enjoyed talking about his heritage. He had not thought about Earth in years. Out here on the frontier, the past seemed very far away. The storms continued outside, making travel impossible. Did not mind. He had enough food and water stored for months, and he was discovering that he liked having company after all. said she was a researcher who had been studying the minerals on Seven when her ship crashed during the storm. Her equipment was destroyed and her communication devices were broken. She would need to wait until the storms ended to contact her people. Believed her, why would he not? She seemed honest and kind. She thanked him many times for saving her life. She offered to help with his work around the shelter, even though she was still weak. By the end of the first week, could walk short distances. She explored small home with great curiosity. She touched his books, his tools, his cooking equipment. Everything seemed to interest her. Your people create many things, she observed one day, holding a small music player that used to listen to old songs from Earth. This device is simple but clever. We are good at making things, agreed. Sometimes we make wonderful things. Sometimes we make terrible things. That is how humans are. Looked at him with her strange silver-gold eyes. You speak of your own people as if you are not one of them. Shrugged, I left that world behind. The wars, the politics, the noise. I came here to be alone. Why? She asked softly. The question hung in the air between them. Turned away and pretended to check something on his equipment panel. Some things are hard to explain, he said finally. Did not push him. She simply nodded and changed the subject, but she remembered his words and the pain hidden behind them. As the days became weeks, they developed a routine. Would wake early and prepare breakfast. They would eat together, talking about small things. Then would do his daily work, checking his equipment, tending to his small indoor garden, repairing things that broke. Would watch and sometimes help, learning how he lived. In the evenings, they would sit together and talk for hours. Asked questions about human culture, human beliefs, human ways of thinking. She was especially interested in human stories and music. Played her old Korean songs on his music player. Listened with her eyes closed, her bioluminescent patterns glowing softly in the dim light. When sad songs played, she would ask about the meaning. When happy songs played, she would smile in a way that made feel warm inside. Your people feel things very deeply, she said one night. This music is full of emotion. Joy, sorrow, love, longing, it is beautiful. Music is how we express what words cannot say, replied. He taught her to cook, the simple Korean noodle soup that he ate almost every day. Her first attempt was terrible. She put too much water and not enough seasoning. The noodles were soft and soggy, but she laughed at her own failure, a sound like small bells ringing, and tried again. By her fifth attempt, she made decent. They ate it together while the storm howled outside and realized he was happy. It had been many years since he felt this way. Also taught him things. She showed him how to read the electromagnetic patterns in the sky, predicting when storms would come and when they would go. She explained the minerals of Seven and why they were valuable to her people. She told him about distant planets and ancient civilizations that existed millions of years before humans learned to make fire. But she never spoke much about herself. When asked about her family or her home, she would give short answers and change the subject. He noticed this but did not push. Everyone had secrets. He understood that better than anyone. What did not notice were the tests. Was not just curious. She was studying him. Every question she asked had a purpose. Every story she listened to taught her something about humanity. And every time she watched him make choices, she judged his character. She tested him with small things first. She mentioned being cold one night and immediately gave her his only extra blanket without hesitation. She said she missed fresh food, and he opened his emergency stores to make her something special, even though those supplies were precious. Then she tested him with bigger things. One evening, a message came through his communication system. His neighbor, Park, was calling. Lived 3 hours away with his wife and 2 young children. His water purification system had broken, and he did not have the parts to fix it. Did not hesitate. He told he would come as soon as the storm calmed enough for travel. He would bring the parts needed. Watched him pack his bag. You will give him these parts, she asked. Yes, said simply. But you need them yourself. If your own system breaks, you will have nothing. Shrugged, has children. Children need clean water, I can manage. He cannot pay you, pointed out. I heard your conversation, he has no money. I did not ask for money. Was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question that she truly wanted answered. Why do you help him? He is not your family, he is not your friend, he has nothing to offer you. Why? Stopped packing and looked at her. His face was confused, as if the question made no sense to him. Because he needs help, he said slowly. Because I can help. What other reason do I need? He went back to packing, not understanding why eyes grew wet with something that looked like tears. Later that night, when was sleeping, stood by the window and looked at the stormy sky. Her mind was heavy with thoughts. Your people, she whispered to herself, you are not what the reports say. For hundreds of years, her empire had watched humanity grow and spread across the stars. They had seen human wars and human cruelty. They had watched humans destroy their own planet and fight each other for resources. Many in her empire believed humans were dangerous animals that needed to be controlled or destroyed before they became a threat. But the reports had not shown this. They had not shown a tired man running into a deadly storm to save a stranger. They had not shown someone sharing their last supplies with neighbors they barely knew. They had not shown kindness given freely, without any expectation of return. Maybe, she thought, she had finally found what she had been searching for. The next day, she asked another question. If you could go back to your old life, would you? The military, the cities, the other humans. Thought carefully before answering. No, he said finally. I made too many mistakes back then. I hurt people without meaning to. I followed orders that I should have questioned. Here I cannot hurt anyone. Here I can just be simple and quiet. But you help people, said. Your neighbor, me, you still help. Helping is different from fighting, replied. Helping makes things better. Fighting just makes more broken pieces. Smiled softly. You are a good man. I think you do not know how good you are. Looked embarrassed. He mumbled something about checking his equipment and walked away quickly. But smile remained long after he left, and in her heart a decision was slowly forming, a decision that would change the fate of two civilizations. Outside, the storms finally began to calm. The morning started like any other. Woke up early and made breakfast while slept in her corner of the small shelter. The storms had finally stopped 2 days ago and the sky was clear for the first time in weeks. Soon, would be able to contact her people. Soon, she would leave. Tried not to think about how empty his home would feel after she was gone. He was stirring a pot of rice porridge when the shadow fell across his window. At first, he thought it was a cloud. Then the shadow grew larger and darker, blocking out the morning sun completely. Walked to the window and looked up. His heart stopped. Ships were descending from the sky. Not small transport vessels like humans used on this planet. These were enormous things, bigger than anything had ever seen. They were made of something that looked like crystal, and they caught the light in strange, beautiful ways. There were dozens of them, moving in perfect formation, slowly coming down toward the surface of 7. Had served in the military for 10 years. He had seen many alien ships during the colony wars, but he had never seen anything like this. These ships were ancient and powerful, built by a civilization far beyond human technology. He knew immediately who they belonged to. The Ascendancy. Every human child learned about the in school. They were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, with an empire that covered 12 star systems. They had technology that humans could not even understand, and they did not like humanity. There had been conflicts before, border disputes, trade arguments, diplomatic incidents that nearly became wars. They saw humans as a young and dangerous species, spreading too fast across the galaxy. Many humans feared that one day they would decide to stop humanity's expansion permanently. And now their ships were here, on this tiny frontier planet, right above his home. Shouted, running to wake her, "Get up, we need to hide." Opened her eyes slowly. She did not look surprised. She did not look afraid. She simply sat up and looked at with calm, steady eyes. "They are not here to harm you," she said quietly. "What? How do you know that?" demanded. "Those are ships. They could destroy this entire planet." "They will not," said, "I promise you." Something in her voice made pause. He looked at her face, searching for answers. She met his gaze without flinching. "What is happening? Who are you really?" Before she could answer, they both heard the sound of ships landing outside. Heavy footsteps approached the shelter. Many heavy footsteps. Acted on instinct. He grabbed his old service rifle from its storage case and loaded it with quick, practiced movements. The rifle was decades old, designed for fighting human enemies. It would probably do nothing against armor, but it was all he had. "Stay behind me," he told. "If they attack, try to run. There is a back exit through the storage room." Wait started. But he was already moving toward the front door. His heart pounded in his chest. His hands were sweaty around the rifle grip. He was probably going to die in the next few minutes, but if they wanted to take, they would have to go through him first. He did not stop to wonder why he felt so protective of someone he had only known for a few weeks. He did not have time to think about it. He only knew that she was his guest, his friend, and maybe something more, and he would not let anyone hurt her. Kicked open the door and stepped outside, rifle raised. He found himself facing an army. Soldiers stood in perfect rows, stretching back as far as he could see. They were tall, much taller than humans, with silver-blue skin similar to his. Their armor was made of the same crystal-like material as their ships, and it glowed faintly with inner light. Each soldier held a weapon that hummed with energy. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands. Knew he was going to die, but his hands did not shake, his voice did not tremble. "I do not know what you want," he shouted, loud enough for them all to hear, "but you will have to go through me first." The soldiers did not attack. They did not even raise their weapons. Instead, something strange happened. They dropped to their knees. Every single soldier, as far as could see, lowered themselves to the ground. They bowed their heads in a gesture of deep respect, or worship. Stared at them in complete confusion. This made no sense. Why would they bow to a human farmer on a forgotten frontier planet? Then he heard soft footsteps behind him. "Lower your weapon, my friend," said gently. "They are here for me." Turned to look at her. What he saw made him forget how to breathe. Was different. Her torn, dirty clothes were gone. In their place, she wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid silver and deep cosmic purple. The fabric moved like water, flowing around her body in waves that gravity. Symbols that did not recognize glowed along the edges of her robes. But that was not the most incredible thing. Around her head, floating just above her silver-blue hair, was a crown of pure light. Not metal or jewels, but actual light, condensed and shaped into a circle of burning brilliance. It pulsed with power that could feel in his bones. Walked past him, toward the kneeling army. Every step she took left faint glowing footprints on the ground. The soldiers pressed their foreheads even lower. She stopped and turned back to face. Her eyes, those strange silver-gold eyes, were filled with emotions he could not read. "I am sorry I did not tell you sooner," she said. Her voice was the same but somehow different, older, more powerful. "I needed to be sure." "Sure of what?" whispered. His rifle hung forgotten at his side. "Sure that I could trust you, sure that I could trust humanity." She took a deep breath. "My name is of House Eternal. I am the first voice of the Ascendancy. I am the Queen of 12 Systems." The words hit like physical blows. He stumbled backward, nearly falling. The Queen of the most powerful person in an empire that humans both feared and. She had been living in his small shelter, eating his simple food, learning to cook on his old stove. "Why?" he managed to ask. "Why are you here? Why were you in that storm?" His face became sad. "My ship was sabotaged by enemies who wanted me dead. They did not want me to make a decision that would change the future of our peoples." "What decision?" She looked at him with an expression that he would never forget: gratitude, respect, and something deeper that had no name. "The decision about what to do with humanity." Felt the weight of those words settle onto his shoulders. He thought about all their conversations over the past weeks, all the questions she had asked, all the times she had watched him make choices, watched him help his neighbor, watched him share his food without asking for anything in return. She had been testing him, testing humanity through him. And his voice came out rough. "What did you decide?" Smiled. It was the same smile she had given him when she finally made good. Warm and real and human in a way that should have been impossible. "I decided that my people have been wrong about humans," she said, "and I decided that it is time for us to stop being enemies." She turned back to her soldiers and raised her hand. The army rose as one, their movements perfectly synchronized. "Bring the human," she commanded. "He will come with us to the council. They need to hear his story." Wanted to protest. He wanted to say that he was just a farmer, just a tired old soldier who wanted to be left alone. He wanted to run back inside his small shelter and pretend none of this was happening. But when looked at him, waiting for his answer, he found that he could not refuse. Whatever was coming next, he would face it, because that was what humans did. They faced the impossible and refused to give up. The inside of the flagship was like nothing had ever imagined. The walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The floors were smooth and warm under his feet. Everything felt ancient and powerful, built by a civilization that had mastered the stars when humans were still learning to use fire. Crew members watched him as he walked through the ship, following and her guards. Some looked curious. Others looked disgusted. A few looked afraid, as if he were a dangerous animal that might attack at any moment. Kept his head up and his back straight. He was a guest, not a prisoner. At least that was what told him. They stopped in front of a large door that opened without sound. Inside was a room with massive windows that showed the stars as rivers of light. The view was so beautiful that forgot to breathe for a moment. He had never seen space like this. It was like looking at the face of God. Dismissed her guards with a wave of her hand. The door closed behind them, leaving the two of them alone. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a chair that grew out of the floor like a living thing. "We need to talk." Sat carefully, half expecting the chair to swallow him. But it was comfortable, adjusting to his body shape perfectly. "You have questions," said. It was not a question. "Many," admitted, "but I do not know where to start." Walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Her crown of light floated above her head, casting strange shadows across her face. "Let me start then," she said. "Let me tell you the truth about why I was on that planet, why I was in that storm, why I let you save me." She turned to face him. "My empire has been watching humanity for 300 years, since your people first left Earth and began spreading across the stars. We have studied your history, your wars, your achievements, your failures." "And what did you see?" asked quietly. "Contradiction," replied. "We saw a species that created beautiful music and terrible weapons, a species that showed great kindness to some and great cruelty to others, a species that destroyed its own planet and then reached for new worlds rather than fixing what they broke." She paused. "My council is divided. Half of them want to offer humanity an alliance, trade, technology, partnership. They believe humans have potential, that you could become great allies. And the other half—" His face grew dark. "The other half want to conquer you. They believe humanity is too dangerous to be allowed to grow unchecked. They want to crush your colonies and make your species into servants of our empire. Felt cold despite the warm room. Servants, slaves, that was what many humans feared about that they saw other species as tools to be used. "Which side are you on?" he asked. "I was not on any side," said. "That is why I came to Seven. I needed to see for myself. I needed to know if humanity was worth saving." She walked toward him slowly. "The council showed me reports and recordings. They showed me human wars and human crimes, but I knew something was missing. Reports only show what the writer wants you to see. I needed to meet a human myself, a normal human, not a diplomat or a politician, but an ordinary person." "So you crashed your ship on purpose?" asked, confused. "No, that was real." His voice became bitter. "Lord, the leader of the faction that wants to conquer humanity, learned of my secret mission. He had my ship sabotaged. He wanted me to die before I could make my decision. With me gone, he could push the council toward war." "But you survived." "Because of you." Stopped in front of him and looked into his eyes. "I had accepted death in that storm. I was ready to let go. Then a human ran through poison air and toxic dust to save a stranger. A species that my people call primitive and dangerous sent one man to carry me to safety." Shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," said firmly, "they would not. I have lived for over 400 years. I have seen many species and many worlds. What you did was not normal. What you did was extraordinary." Did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary. He was just a man who tried to do the right thing. Sometimes he succeeded. Often he failed. Continued. "After you saved me, I stayed to learn more. I watched how you lived. I listened to your stories. I tested you in small ways and big ways." "The blanket," said, understanding now. "The food, my neighbor's water purifier." Nodded. "Yes. I wanted to see who you were when no one was watching. I wanted to see if you would be kind only when it was easy or also when it was hard." "And what did you learn?" Smiled, and it was the same warm smile he remembered from their weeks together. "I learned that the reports were wrong. I learned that humanity is not just violence and destruction. You are also compassion and sacrifice. You are stubbornness and hope. You are flawed and beautiful and terrifying and wonderful." She reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cool and smooth, just like he remembered. "I learned that my people have lived for 100,000 years and built empires across the stars. But somewhere along the way, we forgot something important, something that you showed me." "What did I show you?" whispered. "That true strength is not power over others," said softly. "True strength is the choice to be kind when cruelty would be easier. True strength is helping a stranger when you gain nothing from it. True strength is standing in front of an army with an old rifle because you believe it is right." Her eyes were wet now. Tears, or something like tears, ran down her silver-blue cheeks. "My people have conquered 1,000 species and grown weaker for it. We have forgotten what it means to simply be good. You reminded me." Felt his own eyes grow wet. He was not a man who cried easily, but something about her words reached deep inside him and touched wounds he thought had healed long ago. "I am not a good man," he said, his voice rough. "I have done terrible things. In the war, I followed orders that killed innocent people. I pretended not to see crimes because speaking up was too dangerous. I ran away from everything instead of trying to make things better." "And yet you ran into a storm for a stranger," replied. "That is what matters, not the mistakes of the past but the choices of the present." She squeezed his hand. "Tomorrow, we arrive at the council chamber. The lords and ministers of the ascendancy will decide the fate of your people. Lord will argue for conquest. I will argue for alliance. But my words alone may not be enough." "What do you need me to do?" asked. "I need you to speak," said. "I need you to show them what I have seen. I need you to prove that humanity is worth saving." Fear grips heart. Speaking to an army of lords, arguing for the fate of billions of humans. He was a farmer, a hermit, a man who ran away from his own kind because he could not face them anymore. But then he looked at its face. He saw the hope there, the trust. She had given him something precious. She had looked at humanity through his eyes and decided they were worth fighting for. How could he do any less? "I am not good with words," he said slowly. "I do not know fancy speeches or diplomatic tricks. All I know is what I have lived." "Then tell them that," said. "Tell them the truth. That is all I ask." Took a deep breath. He thought about his neighbors on Seven. He thought about the children who needed clean water. He thought about all the ordinary humans across all the colony worlds, just trying to live their lives. They were depending on him now. They did not know it, but their futures rested on the shoulders of a tired farmer who had wanted nothing more than to be left alone. "All right," he said finally, "I will try." Smiled, and in that smile saw the future. Whatever happened tomorrow, they would face it together. The council chamber of the Ascendancy was built inside a moon that had been hollowed out thousands of years ago. The ceiling rose so high that clouds formed in the upper reaches. The walls were covered with glowing symbols that recorded the history of an empire older than human civilization. Had never felt so small. He stood beside on a raised platform in the center of the chamber. Around them, arranged in rising circles, sat the lords and ministers of the. There were hundreds of them, all watching him with ancient eyes. Some faces showed curiosity. Many showed contempt. A few showed open hatred. Lord sat in a prominent position to their right. He was tall even for a with cold eyes that reminded of a predator waiting to strike. When their eyes met, smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "The council will come to order," announced a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Queen of House Eternal brings a petition regarding the human species. She will speak first." Stepped forward. Her crown of light burned brighter, filling the chamber with golden warmth. "Lords and ministers of the Ascendancy," she began, her voice carrying perfectly to every corner of the vast space. "For 300 years, we have debated what to do about humanity. Some say they are a threat that must be crushed. Others say they are an opportunity that must be seized. Today, I bring you a third option." She paused, letting her words settle. "I was nearly killed by saboteurs who did not want me to reach this moment. My ship was destroyed. My guards were murdered. I was left to die in a toxic storm on a forgotten planet at the edge of human space." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many eyes turned toward Lord, who kept his face carefully blank. "But I did not die," continued, "because a human saved me, not a soldier, not a diplomat, not a leader, an ordinary farmer who ran into deadly poison to rescue a stranger he had never met." She gestured toward. "This is. He does not speak for humanity's governments or armies. He speaks only for himself. But I believe his voice is worth more than all the reports and recordings we have studied for centuries." Stepped back and nodded at his turn. Walked forward on legs that felt like water. His heart pounded so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. The eyes of the entire leadership pressed down on him like physical weight. He opened his mouth, and for a terrible moment nothing came out. Then he thought of his neighbor's children. He thought of the soldiers he had failed to save during the war. He thought of his face when she first opened her eyes in his small shelter. He found his voice. "I am not good with speeches," he said. His Korean accent was thick and his words were rough and simple, but he did not try to hide it. "I am just a farmer. I grew vegetables and fixed broken machines. That was my life until a few weeks ago." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of the lords who watched him. "When I found in the storm, I did not know she was your queen. I did not know she was important. I only knew that someone was dying and I could help. That is all." Lord stood up. His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "And this is what the Queen offers as evidence of humanity's worth. One man who helped one person. This proves nothing." turned to face him directly. "You want to know what humans are? I will tell you." The chamber grew quiet. "We are messy," said. "We fight among ourselves. We make terrible mistakes. We hurt each other in ways that make no sense. I have seen humans do horrible things. I have done horrible things myself." Lord smiled triumphantly. "The human admits his species is dangerous. What more proof do we need?" "Let me finish," said, his voice growing stronger. "Yes, we are all those things, but we are also more." He stepped toward the crowd, forgetting his fear. "We are the species that sends strangers help after disasters. We are the species that builds hospitals and schools in places we will never see. We are the species that creates music that makes people cry and stories that give people hope." He turned slowly, looking at every face he could see. "You have watched us for 300 years. You have seen our wars and our crimes, but have you seen our kindness? Have you seen our parents sacrificing for children? Have you seen neighbors helping neighbors? Have you seen people standing up against injustice even when it costs them everything?" The chamber was completely silent now. "You want to conquer us?" His voice rose with emotion he could not control. "Maybe you can. Your ships are bigger, your weapons are stronger, your empire is older, but I promise you this." He pointed at Lord. "If you try to crush us, we will not just fight back. We will make you regret it. Not because we are strong, but because we are stubborn. We do not know how to give up. We do not know how to stop trying. Even when everything is against us, we keep going." He lowered his hand and spoke more quietly. "But if you choose alliance instead of conquest, we will surprise you in other ways. We will show up when no one expects us. We will rebuild what we break. We will create things your ancient minds have never imagined. And we will never, ever stop trying to be better than we were yesterday." He looked at. She was crying openly now, tears of light running down her face. "Queen asked me what I could promise on behalf of humanity. I cannot promise for all humans. I can only promise for myself." He placed his hand over his heart. "I promise that I will always try to do what is right, even when it is hard. I promise that I will always help those who need help, even when I gain nothing from it. I promise that I will always see the good in others before the bad." He looked back at the council. "That is not a promise from humanity. That is a promise from one human, but I believe there are millions more like me. Maybe billions, and if you give us a chance, we will prove it." Fell silent, he had nothing left to say. The chamber erupted. Lords and ministers shouted at each other. Some called for alliance. Others demanded conquest. Lord was yelling about weakness and danger. His supporters were banging their hands against their seats in protest. But other voices rose up too. Voices that spoke of hope. Voices that spoke of change. Voices that said maybe, just maybe, the old way was not the only way. Raised her hand, and slowly the chaos died down. "The council will vote," she announced, "all in favor of alliance with humanity." Hands rose throughout the chamber, counted them, his heart in his throat. "All in favor of conquest." More hands rose, many hands, too many. Closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her face was calm. "The vote for alliance wins, by 17 voices. 17 out of hundreds, the narrowest victory possible." But it was enough. Lord stormed out of the chamber, his supporters following. Their anger was clear. This was not over. There would be challenges ahead, political battles, perhaps real battles. But today, humanity had won the right to exist as friends rather than servants. Felt his legs give out. He sat down hard on the platform floor, his body shaking with relief. Walked over and sat beside him. Her crown dimmed to a soft glow. In this moment, she was not the queen of 12 systems. She was just the woman who had laughed at her burned and asked endless questions about human music. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it," corrected. I could not have spoken without you believing in me first." They sat together in silence as the chamber emptied around them. Outside the massive windows, stars shone like scattered diamonds. "What happens now?" asked. "Now the real work begins," replied. "Building bridges between our peoples, learning to trust each other, making something new from something old." She looked at him with her silver-gold eyes. "I will need an ambassador, someone who understands both worlds, someone who can show my people what humanity truly is." Laughed weakly, "I am a farmer." "You were a farmer," corrected. "Now you are something else. You are proof that one person can change the fate of civilizations." She stood and offered him her hand. "Will you help me? Will you help me build a future where our peoples stand together instead of apart?" Looked at her hand. He thought about his quiet life on Seven, his small shelter, his simple routines, everything he had wanted. Then he thought about what that life had given him: a chance to save a queen, a chance to speak for billions, a chance to matter in ways he never imagined. He took her hand and let her pull him to his feet. "I am probably going to make many mistakes," he warned. Smiled, that warm human smile that seemed impossible on an alien face. "Good," she said. "That means you are trying." Together, they walked out of the council chamber and into a future that no one had expected. Behind them, the stars watched and waited to see what would happen next. The alliance between humans and would not be easy. There would be struggles and setbacks, conflicts and compromises. But on that day in that ancient chamber, a tired farmer and an immortal queen had planted a seed. And from that seed, something beautiful would grow. 3 years later, on a small planet at the edge of human space, the storms still came. And during those storms, when her duties allowed, a queen would appear at a farmer's door. They would cook together. They would watch the lightning dance across the sky. They would talk about everything and nothing. "Do you regret it?" she asked him once, "being pulled into all this?" Thought about the question while stirring the noodles. "I was just a guy trying to survive on a rock at the edge of nowhere. Now I am part of something bigger," he shrugged. "Could be worse, could be raining.